No, it's
Get
okay.
ready.
So back to what I had built actually. So I had built the flat Earth clues, and I'll rattle them off real quick. Well, not real quick, but you guys can interject with anything, and if there was any particular points you wanted to look at, or if you want to skip over anything. But I start out with the introduction, which was more or less just kind of a breaking down of what you're going to see. Talking about the planes in the southern hemisphere and Antarctica and Admiral Byrd and NASA. Just kind of gave you a quick overview of what was going on. But what I was hinting at was like, look, it is the world that you know is not what you think it is. And when you break it down into easy to understand, digestible pieces, it becomes, you slowly but surely, you go from a point of scratching your head and nodding and going, I'm still not buying it, to the point where you're looking at it and going, the burden of proof shifts to the people that you put your trust in all these years, which is the government and the military. And I know there's some people out there that they literally will say to me, they'll say, the government would never lie to us in a million years. And I'm going, yeah, well, that's not exactly what they do. And in fact, it's part of the reason I think this thing has gotten so much traction this year, not just my stuff, but other people's stuff, is because there's been so many lies told, the internet has really helped this, that people have been looking for the next big lie. Especially, after 9/11 or Boston bombing or Sandy Hook, or just take your pick. People have been looking for it. And now it's like, you didn't have to look for it. You've been standing on it the entire time. Guess what?
That's what's so amazing, man. That is
here
so
it is
amazing.
For you. Do you mind if I just kind of go down through the clues?
Go right ahead. That's what I want you to do. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Just a sec before you start. I just want everyone who's downloading, the name of the YouTube video is Flat Earth Clues, 15 Parts by Mark Sargent. And I posted a link in the chat room, but for the downloaders, that's the name, Flat Earth Clues, 15 Parts by Mark Sargent on YouTube. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and those 15 parts include the intro, the 11 clues, and that's 12, and then the 3 trailers.
I can't wait till the 13th clue. You said it was going to be big, and I can't wait till you come out with that one.
Well, I'm going to hold on to. Yeah, that one's a secret right now. I'm not telling anybody.
That's what you said. That's what you said.
So anyway, clue 1, which I called the empty theater, and that was really more of an appetizer more than anything. But I thought it was a valid point, which was most people, especially being in America, we watch a lot of media. We watch a lot of television. We watch a lot of movies. We read a lot of books. And I've watched a lot of movies over the years. I grew up. I'm old enough that that I was there when video stores were brand new, and caught up on just about every movie that was relevant movie that was ever made. And I realized as I was going through this that there had never been a movie made about the moon missions. And people, immediately when they hear that, they're going, "No, come on! There's been a movie made about the moon missions." I'm going, "Really? What were they? What was it?" And people, and so what I did was I listened. I go, yeah, there's been science fiction movies. There's been a lot of space movies, fantasy space movies, Star Wars, Star Trek, Aliens. Take your pick. Bunch of those movies. But when it comes to the realistic movies, they're very, very few and far between. To the point where you look at anything that has to deal with the actual Apollo program, even if it's fictionalized, actually dealing with it. There's only been 2 movies that are even touched it, and that the first one was in 1983. So if the moon program ended supposedly in 1972, the first moon movie that was ever done was The Right Stuff in 1983, and it was really just an astronaut training movie more than anything. It was 3 hours, and there should have been a sequel, and there never was. And then the only other movie after that even touched on it at all was Apollo 13. So you'd think, Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17, those all supposedly landed on the moon. They didn't want to touch those. But the Apollo 13, that was sneaky. It was very easy for them to do because the whole thing was supposedly in a capsule. They never landed. They had mechanical problems. They barely made it home alive. And that was it. That was 1995. And no movie, even straight-to-video movies, you'd think that you'd get at least one failure in there. And why I brought that up is it's important because it shows you that the powers that be, and I call them the authority, and I really am just lumping up the government, the super rich, and the royals, they don't control just the real world. They control the fictional world as well. A lot of the television programs you watch, a lot of the movies that you watch, they go through an approval process that deals with them. And they did not want you to watch a movie that was fictionalized based on the moon, because if you knew it was Hollywood, the lines start to blur there, and you don't know exactly what you're looking at.
Yep.
And it was, again, it was an easy clue to throw out there. Not that many, some people liked it. Nobody hated it, but it was kind of put the doubt in your head to where it's like, look, there's something being hidden from you, and you don't know what it is yet. And that was the first thing I was throwing out there was this thing is, we've gone through 72 to now, as at 50 plus years, and nobody's made a realistic movie about the space program ever.
Nope.
And it's the great, and everyone knows in Hollywood, or Hollyweird or whatever you want to call it, if there's a nickel to be made, they're going to make it, and 2 sequels to go along with it.
Absolutely.
And we make horrible movies in America. I mean, there's a lot of awful movies that are made, and because again they make a nickel. And you're telling me the greatest achievement in mankind, and no one's going to touch it? No.
Oh, yeah, Mark, and there's one more thing. Neither is any other studios making any. Not just America, not Japan either.
Yeah, good point. Excellent point. So anyway, moving on though. That was the first clue, kind of to get people in the right frame of mind. The second clue was called the bird wall, which was probably one of my favorites, which was because I kind of stumbled across what was happening there, and that was about a guy named Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the youngest admiral ever in the United States Navy, and probably our greatest explorer of all time. Maybe not the world's greatest explorer, but the greatest modern day explorer, who flew a plane in 1926 up to the North Pole, and this is when planes were not that good. And he's mostly known for the Hollow Earth theory, and I won't really go into the Hollow Earth that much. But after 1926, you would have thought, well, he maybe would have done more stuff up in the Arctic Circle, but no, he was ordered, or whatever you want to call it, and sent down to the South Pole from 1926 until his dying day in 1928. Until his dying day in 1957, a whole bunch of missions funded by, most of them were military backed in one way or another. The most famous, of course, being Operation High Jump in 1946, where he may or may not have engaged the Nazis because he led an entire carrier group,
right?
Full support team, the whole 9 yards. But whatever it was, people say, well, why don't you focus more on the Nazi thing in Antarctica? I go, well, because whatever it was, he seemed to take care of it. He didn't seem bothered. The big thing is this. He comes on, and we were so lucky to get this. He comes because we don't have that much 50s television footage, like this. But there was a television show called The Longines, I pronounce it right this time, Longines, Chronoscope, in 1954. He was between missions, and he comes on television. It's kind of like a National Geographic.
All right, let me stop you right there. You folks listen to what Mark's fixing to say, and then go watch the video for yourself, okay? It's online. Anybody can pull it up and watch it. Listen to what Mark's fixing to say about the resources and everything. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, okay. So, he comes on this show in 1954, and again, you can look this up on YouTube. All you have to do is type in Admiral Richard Byrd interview, and it's out there. It's been replicated a whole bunch of times. It's in black and white, but it's very, very clear. It's amazing because it's a studio quality. Somebody from the studio, from CBS, an affiliate, released it. I don't know who or how or why, but it was great.
Just a coincidence, I guess, Mark.
Yeah, just a coincidence that was released. Really,
I've never
weird.
seen a coincidence myself.
There you go. Yeah. I believe in coincidences. I've just never seen one. He comes on and he starts talking about Antarctica because he's getting ready for another mission, which was going to be that following year, 1955 to 1956, called Operation Deep Freeze. And he's talking about it, how he's getting ready for it, and he just got back from there. But he was basically hyping up all the corporations of the world, not just America, and saying, look, this place is made out of money. He goes, there's an entire mountain range made out of coal that can supply the entire world. There's oil, there's minerals, there's uranium. It's just there for the taking, and not only that, but there's nothing to conflict. There's not a rainforest you have to chop down to get to. There's not a bunch of animals you have to run over to get to. There's no indigenous population. There's no animal life. There's no plant life. There's not a single tree, as far as anyone knows. And he's getting everybody ready for this thing, and everyone's agreed. He was very clear and very specific about it. They dedicated really the whole show to Antarctica. And he goes down in 1955 it turns out to be his final mission, Operation Deep Freeze. You can look this up. It's all public record. And he finds something. And whatever it was, and I have no doubt in my mind what it was. He found what I considered to be the edge, the firmament, whatever. Yeah, he found the edge of our world, to where everything changed after 1956. People don't realize how weird the world got when it came to government and the moves they made since 1956. Right after that happened, all the nations that were down there, and there were a lot, because this is post-World War II. There was Russia, there was America, there was United Kingdom, Chile, Argentina, New Zealand, a whole bunch of nations that were down there. They all left the ice at the same time, really, really quickly, unilaterally. And I've never seen anything like that. And at the same time, Russia and America, all of a sudden they start to ramp up their rocket program. But then, and I'll cut to the chase here, which is they put in a treaty, shortly afterwards. They worked on it almost immediately. They put in a treaty in place and said no corporation from any country, anywhere in the world, can do anything on Antarctica ever.
Okay, brother, stop right there. Let me throw this in if you don't mind. Folks,
Sure.
You need to think about the money. You need to think about what he just got through telling you. These oil corporations, the Rockefellers, all this Dutch oil shell, all those oil companies, you can't keep them out of your backyard if they want to go. And what Mark's telling you is absolutely true. They won't even mention it. They won't even mention Antarctica. Don't look at this from the perspective of the way we are now, thinking about the way we are now. Look back then. There was no Greenpeace. There was no environmental movement. Nothing. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, you're absolutely right. This was 1959. Greenpeace wasn't even founded until 1971. And this was, I've never seen a conspiracy yet that's bigger than money. Even Area 51, they had to, they did what they could there to seal off part of Nevada. But this was sealing off an entire continent. And not only that, but the Area 51, that was just an American thing. This was all the nations of the world at the same time, all agreeing at the same time that no one should ever go there, ever, ever, ever. And I have no doubt in my mind that Russia and America, they were the ones that were leading the charge on this. I think America, the United States, had to let Russia in on it to because they needed another world power. America just couldn't say it on their own. They needed a partner in this. And when they did that, things got really, really strange, because America and Russia, think of it this way. Let's say Admiral Byrd did get out there and did find the edge of the firmament, the edge of the world. Well, he would have walked up to a massive wall, whatever it's made out of. It's a heavy element, a heavy water, a force field, a thing made out of sound harmonics. Who knows? But whatever it was beyond their comprehension, and they couldn't even come up with a cover story for it, and it was massive to the point where I don't think they could even figure out how big it was. So that at that point they had to if this thing started going up through the clouds into the sky, you had to figure how are you going to figure out how big it is? Well, the only way really to tell is to fire rockets up there.
Oh, by the way, you didn't mention about those planes that ran into the firmament. I've seen some reports about that. I can't verify them, but it seems like some of Byrd's planes hit the firmament.
We'll see. Yeah, there were some plane crashes. In the 40s during Operation High Jump, to be sure.
Right.
We don't know. The cover story may have been the Nazi thing. It may have been a UFO thing. Hard to say, because most of that operation not really talked about. But
that's correct.
So the United States and Russia start up their rocket program in 1957, and very urgently they were ramping up their rocket program, and within a year, they started putting atomic weapons on the tips of these rockets and started firing them straight up, which is really, really odd, because in fact the first couple shots of America were over 3 megatons, and that's huge considering the weapons that were used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were kiloton weapons, only 20 kilotons. These were megatons. These were million-ton weapons, and they kept firing. But after those first few shots, something, again, you think it wouldn't get any stranger than that, but after those first few shots, something even stranger happened, and that was NASA was formed right away in 1958. Almost immediately which I'm looking at this, I'm going, okay, they can't break through it. Therefore, they figured out they're going to have to militarize space. They're going to have to be the gatekeepers of the sky.
Okay, let me give you something else to ponder. You might have thought about this, and you might haven't. But think about their contingency plan with CERN.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. I thought about it.
CERN was started in the 50s also. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's been certain, if you want to look at the firmament kind of like a jailbreak scenario, if the fallen are down here as well, you got to think that maybe every civilization that gets ramped up, that goes through its national process, they have the unique ability to come up with their own technology. If atomic weapons didn't work, maybe HARP will work. If HARP didn't work, maybe CERN will work, or some other black budget operation. It's intriguing, no question. So when NASA is formed in 1958, they start up with their program. But it's interesting is a year later, 1959, again a pivotal year. NASA announces the Van Allen radiation belts, which again, people will say, well, I've heard people say that they kind of have to tell you the truth sometimes. They try to tell it to you, in a certain way, so that people don't get it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a Luciferian rule that they have to either kind of vaguely tell you the truth or just come out and tell you the truth in
there
a
you go.
weird way.
Yeah, I believe that. And so in 1959, Van Allen, a NASA employee, announces that there is a massive barrier of radiation which nobody can get through. It'll kill humans, and it's very big and very deadly. At the same time of 1959, they shut down Antarctica permanently. The treaty goes into place, and at that point they've sealed off the upper edge and the outer edge. And to me, that just screamed structure. If it would have been one thing at one different year and a couple of years later, maybe you could get away with it. But to seal off the upper edge and the outer edge at the same time, no. They were protecting, they were doing everything they could to make sure that they were laying the foundations so that the private sector didn't get to do what, were controlled. Corporations, they didn't want, even though they would have loved to have people made money off coal and uranium and oil, you can't allow corporations into Antarctica to, in case, you have a stray vehicle, a stray helicopter, a stray plane. Because once that happens, you got to take care of them, unfortunately. And space was a little bit easier, but if you say that, NASA's got space covered, then you don't have to worry about General Motors or McDonnell Douglas or Lockheed or any of the private contractors getting involved, because sooner or later they would have. Someone would have done it for not necessarily national pride, but for corporate pride. And so by the time I'd gotten done with the whole Admiral Byrd thing, and again, he died of natural causes in 1957, but supposedly, but at the same time, the man seemed to have a lot of integrity, and he liked being interviewed on top of it. And I'm wondering if they talked to him and they looked at him and said, you know what, he's going to slip. He's gonna say something, or even though people couldn't record anything at home, it was only maybe a matter of time, and so I think he was voted out.
Like they did Admiral Forrestal.
There you go. So anyway, moving on to number 3, which was the map makers. Also an interesting take, which was I was trying to look and see what the world actually looked like. Because everyone says, well, what's the map of the flat world or the enclosed world of the Truman Show? What does it look like? And as I was digging into that, I found some very, very interesting things. And again, none of this is secret information. You can Google it. I Wikipedia'd this one, which was I was looking for a list of map projections, world map projections more specifically. And I found a bunch of projections, and one of them really, really stuck out because there seemed to, a lot of them were boring. They weren't cross-referenced with anything, but one of them was, and it was called the Azimuthal, Azimuthal, equidistant map, which is EQI distant map. And it was interesting because it showed a top-down view of the world where the North Pole, if it was a circular map, the North Pole was the center of the map. The continents were kind of spread on the outside. And Antarctica, being that it was on the very outside of the map, was stretched around the entire ring of it like a giant ice wall, which again falls into some of the old stories and myths and legends. And I thought,
in the book of Job, in chapter 38, says the face of the deep is frozen.
Oh, nice. I like that. If you guys want to have some fun, look at the last verse of the book. I know it's not canonized like Enoch is.
Oh, we've already went through that, had a program on it.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. So what happened was I was looking at this map, and it was cross-referenced to several organizations, big organizations. One was the USGS, which is the United States Geological Survey, that actually had it in their catalog. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. Why are they using that? And it was also referenced, the design of the map went back 1,000 years, literally to 1000 AD. And it was designed by a Persian scientist named Al-Biruni. Which, it's got to be a weird, maybe it's a bad reference, maybe it's a bad link. Well, no, because Al-Biruni was tied to NASA. And people say, well, how is a 1,000-year-old Persian scientist tied to NASA? It's because they named a moon crater after him.
Yes, they did.
And I thought, that is really, really strange. And the more I looked at this map, the stranger it got, because there were two more references to it. One, of course, was the Flat Earth Society, which used the identical map. The only difference was it was colored a deeper blue, but it wasn't cross-referenced to the USGS map. And the other one was the United Nations flag. The United Nations flag is the AE or azimuthal map, which is used by the USGS. And so if you guys want to know exactly what the flat Earth looks like, all you have to do is look at the UN flag, and you say, well, why would the UN flag, why would the UN be using a flat Earth map? And it's because they don't see it as a flat Earth map. They see it as just a projection. But the thing is, there's something wrong with that map. And what's wrong is Antarctica isn't on it. The map was finished in 1946, which is interesting because that was the same year as Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd. But I don't think he had found it yet. I think the old societies, the old secret societies, I think they knew. I think they had this map for hundreds of, maybe even longer years. But they had no way to prove it even for themselves. And I think they had jumped the gun in 1946 when they made the UN flag.
Yeah, that guy that hung up on you the other night on that interview tried to go back to the Perry Reese maps and try to debunk you with that map. You remember that?
Yeah, he was going nowhere with that. In fact, it was probably good that he hung up when he did, because he was also talking about how ancient cultures were using balloons to help map out the world, and it's like, what are you talking about? That you couldn't even carry people in balloons until 1760. So don't give me that. That guy was he wasn't. I felt bad because he didn't seem prepared when he had called in, but that's all right. That happened. So the UN flag is the Flat Earth map, and the Flat Earth map is the USGS map. The difference is that the USGS map is considered legit and just a projection, but the Flat Earth map is considered crazy because it's considered literal. And there's just way too many coincidences with this. The UN flag, people say, well, the UN flag, it's a good map to use for the UN flag. I was going, what are you talking about? You could have come up with dozens of other designs to incorporate the world better than that. In fact, why not just make a freaking globe? If you're going to do that, but and why leave off Antarctica? If it's a massive continent that's bigger than Australia, then why leave it off? Why be so conspicuous about it and replace the continent of Antarctica with these big spiky reefs going around the outside like a Greek or Roman headdress? And it just was really, really, again, it was just one of those interesting things that I threw at people, and it seemed to really grab hold of them.
Today I was watching a YouTube video made by BBC News, and they were interviewing a Professor Jerry Broughton, and the name of the video is BBC News about the Mercator projection in Google Maps.
Yeah, that's the Mercator map, and this guy, Brother David's talking about, said that there was no such thing as a map made without an agenda behind it.
Yeah,
there are no accurate maps.
Yeah,
basically.
I've seen documentaries on that. And you're absolutely right. There is no such thing as an accurate map right now, because they're never objective. They're always subjective. There's always some sort of ulterior motive behind it.
Right.
Exactly.
And
yes. That's well
and for people who don't understand what I mean, the map that you've seen in your classroom, gets pulled down over the blackboard, ever since we've had schools, is called the Mercator map, and that map's 500 years old, and the continents are way off. And scientists will tell you this. They know full well it's not even a dispute that the perspectives are all wrong. Greenland is tiny compared to Africa, and South America is monstrous, and Europe should be way higher on the map. The map that they should be using is called the Gall, and that's Gall Peters map, and that map they can't even get into schools because it's so much tradition over so many years. They just won't do it. And anyone wants to email me at msargent23@comcast.net, I will send you a wonderful overlay that was done by somebody I knew who has the transparent Gall Peters laid over the top of the world map, and it's amazing. It's staggering how different it really is, and that's just perspectives. That's not even the actual shape. They won't even show you exactly how big the countries are, let alone the shape of the world.
That's right. Go ahead with the next clue, brother.
Oh, yeah. So next clue was Shell Beach. This is a fairly quick one, and that was kind of going over perspectives, and that was media, which was, in fact, I'm going to be doing a show later this weekend that covers the media stuff, which is there's been several movies like what you're saying. They'll hide things in plain sight, and they will tell you through predictive programming what the world is really like. And there's been quite a few movies over the years. Yeah,
like they did 9/11 with the Lone Gunman series.
There you go. Yep, 9/11 done years in advance before that ever happened. This stuff goes about 20 years back, roughly. It's a little less, but not much. And I went over perspectives, meaning, is it so hard to believe? And if you look at some of the movies, I looked at Dark City, and I won't really go into that one too much, but we'll go into The Truman Show, and that is, look, if you built a Hollywood soundstage that was 20 miles wide, and you had a kid raised in it, a child raised inside this thing, could you fool them into thinking that was the real world? And I showed fairly easily that, yeah, you can do that, because children want to believe. Children do not automatically think they're being lied to. Right. They believe their parents. They believe their teachers. They believe their government. And again, that's why we believe it's a globe now. You put a globe in our classroom, why would we ever think it's a lie? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't. And so what I was trying to do when I got to Shell Beach was I showed people, it's like, look, if you had the ability to make an enclosed structure bigger than the Truman Show, 100 miles wide, 1,000 miles wide, how many people could you fit in it, and how many people could you fool, as long as you kept them away from the edges? And really, once you got to that point, it was easy. It was not hard at all, because of our willingness to trust people. Mm-hmm. We believe the system and we're in because we are told what it is. Look, NASA told you it was a globe. NASA showed you the picture. And I had somebody who came on a show I was doing a couple months ago where they said, well, I trust NASA. And I say, well, because NASA would never, ever lie to you. The government would never, ever lie to you, ever in a million years. And, they had to stop and pause because they know full well. It's funny because we believe governments, but we don't believe individual politicians. Yeah. We all have we look at politicians, in even a less light than a used car salesman. But yet we believe our government would never, ever deceive us. And I go, no, they would deceive you if they thought it was for the greater good. And they tend to, fudge that quite a bit. What they determine to be the greater good and what you determine, there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, and especially add on to that if they have an agenda.
Exactly. Status Quo, which was number 5. What I got into there was, and I'm kind of skimming over some of the stuff because I want people to watch the clues. The Status Quo was because people were asking me why would you hide it? What does it really matter? Why not tell people what the world looks like? And the big reason, which is why, I do this in status quo, I backed off a little bit when I got to 11 and 12. I'm sorry, 10 and 11, but status quo was trying to tell people, is like, look, religion has been looking for the proof of God for a long time, thousands of years, something that they can show people, the ark, the Holy Grail, as it were. And
now, folks, this is what I meant earlier about Mark coming with the kind of the pragmatic overview using religion there. Just wanted to throw that in there, brother. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But part of it's true, and that is, look, religion and science have been at each other's butting heads for a long time, and the people that discovered whatever was out there, you want to call it the firmament, call it the firmament, but whatever it is proof of God. Proof of intelligent design is it's got God's handprint all over it.
Amen.
If you're a scientific, I'm sorry, go ahead.
He said amen.
Amen, brother.
If you get out there and you're a scientific organization and you see this, and you sit down at a boardroom table shortly afterwards and say, okay, it appears that religion may have a leg up on this. Should we tell the population? Should we tell people what's actually out there? Do we really want to get into this argument again? Because, Christianity especially, they're going to come back and they're going to quote chapter and verse. They're going to say, look, we knew this since the beginning. And you guys have been lying to this, and it would severely undermine a lot of the power structures in the world. They could recover somewhat. They could try to adjust to that, but it would be, you're asking people to fire themselves basically, because these science organizations, some of them wouldn't survive, the next year if this was disclosed. And
their history, Mark. There's two things that folds immediately, and that's evolution. That's gone. It's history. It's gone. It's down the tubes. Right.
Evolution. You're right. Absolutely right. Evolution would be gone. But think of it from a practical standpoint. Every college in every country in the world, every astrophysics department, every astronomy department, they would have to be dismantled and if they even survived at all. But even the other physical sciences, geology, hydrology, geography, archaeology, all those groups would have to completely retool from a different point of view. The textbooks would have to be completely revamped to account for this new model, which happens to be the old model.
Right.
And this would be a big, evolution, it would just get
It's gone. It's history. I mean, that's the end of it, okay?
It would be absolutely gone.
I mean, it's already becoming a dinosaur now, and even Dawkins is having to try to lean toward intelligent design, okay?
Yeah. And it's... Look, they're just not going to deal with that. There's one thing I've learned, again, about the authority, and that is they will delay and not take chances. They were basically going to keep this thing going for as long as they could. The idea at that point came forward and says, you know what, it's only money. Let's see how long we can protect this thing. So that's when they created the Antarctic Defense Force, which is a multinational Navy and Air Force which patrols the entire Antarctic coastline. What the heck is it defending? There's nobody there. So
I bet you guys didn't even know that existed.
Why do you have fighter planes? Why do you have state-of-the-art fighter planes just cruising the Antarctic coastline? Who are you looking for? That's to the extent they will protect this thing if they can. So people, you want to know why? That's why. It changes everything, and it changes it very, very quickly. It kills me every time I see. Usually, it's a younger person that'll be on the forums. They'll say, "What does it matter whether it's a globe or it's flat?" Because if it's flat, God made the flat. That's why. And
Amen.
then you've got a real problem on your hands if you've been doing bad works over your life, which we'll get into. So number 6 was depth perception, and that.
produzco solo videos en inglés y español. Normally I produce only videos in English and Spanish. Normalerweise produziere ich nur Videos en Englisch und Spanisch. Pero hoy voy a hacer otra excepción y traducirlo también en alemán. But today I make another exception and translate it into German too. Aber heute werde ich nochmal eine Ausnahme machen und es auch in Deutsch übersetzen. Ya algunas semanas tengo escrito en mi lista de tareas por hacer de traducir el video hashtag BTC4. Now already some weeks ago I have written on my to-do list to translate the video BTC4, hashtag BTC4. Schon seit ein paar Wochen habe ich auf meiner To-Do-Liste geschrieben, den Video BTC4 in Deutsch zu übersetzen. Estoy segura que esta idea puede ayudar a mucha gente económicamente. I'm sure that this can help many people economically. Ich bin sicher, dass diese Idee vielen Leuten finanziell helfen kann. Y da motivación para aprender Bitcoin. And give motivation to learn about Bitcoin. Und Motivation geben, um über Bitcoin zu lernen. En este momento el precio de Bitcoin es muy bajo, económico. At the moment the price of Bitcoin is very low, economic. Im Moment ist der Preis von Bitcoin sehr tief. Sería el momento ideal para invertir. Hoy es el 15 de abril 2015. Would be the ideal moment to invest. Today is April 15th, 2015. Es wäre der ideale Moment zu investieren. Heute ist der 15. April 2015. El 27 de marzo 2015 he publicado en mi canal de YouTube Vanos Enigma el primer video sobre hashtag BTC4 explicando cómo me vino esta idea. On March 27th of 2015, I published the first video about hashtag BTC4 in my channel YouTube Vanos Enigma, explaining how I got the idea. Am 27. März 2015 habe ich in meinem YouTube-Channel Vanos Enigma den ersten Video über Hashtag BTC4 veröffentlicht und erklärt, wie ich diese Idee bekommen habe. La idea consiste principalmente en lo siguiente. The idea mainly consists in the following. Die Idee besteht hauptsächlich in folgendem. Imprimir direcciones de Bitcoin en papel, 10 o mínimo 10 o mejor 100. To print Bitcoin directions in paper, at least 10 or better 100. Bitcoin Adressen in Papier ausdrucken, Minimum 10 oder besser gleich 100. Y luego poner en cada dirección de Bitcoin una pequeña cantidad de Bitcoin. And then put in every Bitcoin direction a little amount of Bitcoin. Und dann in jede Bitcoin-Adresse eine kleine Summe von Bitcoin transferieren. Y la próxima vez, cuando otra vez ves una persona por la calle pidiendo dinero, and the next time you see again a person begging for money on the street, und das nächste Mal, wenn du wieder eine Person auf der Straße betteln siehst, y para tus amigos y amigas, and for your friends of course, und für deine Freunde natürlich, o tal vez de propina en un restaurante, or maybe a tip in a restaurant, oder Trinkgeld im Restaurant. Bueno, a la hora de imprimir también copiar y guardar las llaves privadas de Bitcoin, de direcciones de Bitcoin. When you print the Bitcoin addresses, copy and save the private keys of the Bitcoin addresses, of course. Wenn man die Bitcoin-Adressen druckt, auch die privaten Schlüssel, Bitcoin-Address-Schlüsseln kopieren und speichern. Y a la hora de distribuir las direcciones de Bitcoin, escribir la fecha, por ejemplo, hoy es el 15 de abril 2015, escribir la fecha más plus 4 años, igual 15 de abril 2019. And then in the moment when you distribute the Bitcoin addresses, you write the date, for example today, April 15th, 2015, plus 4 years is April 15th, 2019. Und dann in dem Moment, wenn man die Bitcoin-Adressen verteilt, auf das Papier schreiben, das heutige Datum, zum Beispiel 15. April 2015, plus 4 Jahre ist gleich 15.04.2019. Luego vas a explicar a la gente, mira, esta es la llave privada, tú y yo la tienes. Si no quitas, transfieres este dinero de Bitcoin en estos 4 años, yo lo vuelvo a tener o sacar. Then you explain to the people, look, this is the private key. I have it and you have it. If you don't take this money, Bitcoin, out of this account, I will take it out in these 4 years, at the end of these 4 years. Und dann erklärst du den Leuten, schau, das ist der private Schlüssel. Ich und du haben diesen privaten Schlüssel, Bitcoin-Schlüssel. Wenn du bis Ende dieser 4 Jahre das Geld Bitcoin nicht raustust, Transfer, dann hole ich es zurück. De esta forma das más motivación a la gente para empezar a aprender cómo funciona Bitcoin. This way you give more motivation to the people to learn how the technology of Bitcoin functions. Auf diese Weise gibst du mehr Motivation den Leuten zu lernen, wie die Technologie von Bitcoin funktioniert. En mi video antiguo English, Espanol. So if you are new in my YouTube channel, I recommend you to watch my video mix number 64 about this hashtag Let's Talk FE. Si estás nueva en mi canal de YouTube, te recomiendo de ver el video mix número 64 sobre el tema de hashtag Let's Talk FE. Tierra plana, flat earth, secreto. But now I want to talk about maybe the most difficult question. Pero ahora quiero hablar sobre que tal vez es la pregunta más difícil. The question of why are they hiding this from us? La pregunta de el por qué están escondiendo este tema de nosotros. I think there are two main reasons. Pienso que hay dos razones principales. I want to start with the second reason, Antarctica. Quiero empezar con la razón número 2, que es Antarctica. You know that after the Second World War, different nations and especially Admiral Byrd explored Antarctica for many years. Sabes que después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, muchas naciones y especialmente el Admiral Byrd ha explorado la Antártida muchos años. And there even exists video about Admiral Byrd talking about Antarctica, that it has many resources, oil, minerals, uranium. Hasta existe un video de Admiral Byrd hablando sobre Antártida y dice que es el continente más rico, que hay mucho petróleo, minerales. But I think it's not just that. He said, yeah, it's very rich, this continent, and he thinks there will be excursions every year. But they must have discovered something else which made all nations stop exploring this continent. I get goosebumps. Pero no es solo eso. Él dijo, sí, que vamos a volver cada año explorando más, pero muy probable que han visto algo más. Porque de repente todas las naciones han dejado de explorar Antártida. Habrán visto algo que les asustó tanto
sí, a mí me pone la piel de gallina. Así que, and you know, now there is an international treaty which prohibits all nations to access Antarctica, the interior, and no plane is allowed to fly over this region. Ya sabes que han hecho un tratado que ninguna nación puede acceder a este lugar interior y tampoco aviones volar encima de Antártida. Just in relation to that topic, the wealth which is being hidden in Antarctica, en relación a ese tema que esta fortuna, estos recursos que están siendo escondidos en Antártida, that oil, petróleo. You know, before there was a law, there had to be gold, replacing all that money which is being printed. Ya sabes que antes había una ley que había tener oro tras todo el dinero que están imprimiendo, and they abolished that law, and now actually it's more or less oil, dollar, oil, luego el oro, así el petróleo ha sustituido el oro, pero tampoco por entero. Tanta deuda externa, so much exterior debt-based economic system, sistema basado en deuda. So imagine so many people starving from hunger and working like crazy. Así que imagina tanta gente muriendo de hambre, matándose por el dinero, and so much wealth being hidden in Antarctica, and toda esa fortuna está siendo escondido in Antártida. Anyway, this is okay. This is something else. Nikola Tesla, free energy, and all these economic interests which made suppress these innovative ideas. Bueno, esto es un poco aparte, pero igualmente importante. El tema de Nikola Tesla, energía libre, se podría ahorrar tanto dinero y solo por estos intereses de... Anyway, do you know this hashtag which rhymes with democracy? Corporatocracy. ¿Conoces este hashtag que se rima en inglés con democracia? Corporatocracy. So, okay, now I want to try to talk about this first reason, which is maybe a little bit complicated to explain my train of thoughts. Bueno, ahora voy a intentar de hablar sobre la primera razón, que tal vez es bastante complicado para explicar mis pensamientos. Just want to start with one German quote. Man sieht den Wald vor lauter Bäumen nicht. Quiero empezar con un dicho en alemán que dice: Man sieht den Wald vor lauter Bäumen nicht. And English translated as like, you don't see the forest because of, with all these trees, you don't see the forest. Traducido es como que no se ve el bosque con tantos árboles. So I want to invite you to try to imagine the big picture. Quiero invitarte para intentar de ver la imagen grande. So don't take just one step, but better 10 steps back and imagine being yourself out of space and looking down on this earth, whichever form it has in your mind. Quiero invitarte de no solo un paso, dar 10 pasos atrás y imaginarte ese mundo como si estarías en el espacio mirando abajo de esta tierra, tenga la forma que tenga en tu mente. There are many atheists which started to believe in creationism and the Bible after looking into that topic of Let's Talk Cafe. Hay muchos ateístas que empezaron de creer en la teoría de la creación y en la Biblia después de estudiar el tema del hashtag Let's Talk FA. So imagine the beginning of times when God, the angels, I think 1/3 of part of the angels, the fallen angels took on his side 1/3 of the angels with him. Imagínate en el principio de los tiempos, Dios y los ángeles y el ángel caído, Lucifer, o como quieras llamar, Satan, and the devil, diablo. Cuando el ángel caído, Lucifer, atrajo en su lado, me parece, una tercera parte de todos los ángeles. Me estoy refiriendo a ángeles, no en California, Los Ángeles, el ángel, ya sabes lo que quiero decir. Just want to mention when I was 3 or 4 years old. Solo quiero mencionar cuando tenía como 3 o 4 años. I had many nightmares, almost every night. Tenía muchas pesadillas cada noche. And it was always that same kind of dream. This contrast between light and dark, or fast and slow, always these contrasts are in the bed very flat, or how can I explain, like you know what I mean, grumpelig in German. Había siempre este contraste entre luz y oscuridad, rápido y despacio, y liso y gambado, como quieras decir. Bueno, contrario de liso. Bueno, creo que esto también un poco se refiere a la sábana cuando está un poco gambado o fuera de su sitio, que ya no esté liso, ¿comprendes? Or with other words, on this contrast between good and evil. O con otras palabras, el contraste entre el bien y el mal. Okay, long story short. Bueno, resumiendo. Anyway, I should mention that I'm very convinced that there's an afterlife, after death. De todas formas, quiero mencionar que estoy muy convencida que hay vida tras la muerte. And I want to remember you that it's written in the Bible that Lucifer is the highest power on this world, not the world later. Quiero recordar que también en algún sitio en la Biblia dice que Lucifer es el maestro de este mundo, no el mundo después. And I want to remember you that all the presidents of the countries are just puppets who execute the agenda of the world elite, which is a satanic system. Quiero recordar que nuestros presidentes de los países que son solo marionetas que ejecuten la voluntad de la élite mundial que gobierna en este sistema satánico. There are many satanic rituals. Hay muchos rituales satánicos. Now I remember, did you hear of the Jesuits? Society of Jesus. ¿Has oído de los jesuitas? Sociedad de Jesús que hacen, and they discovered under many churches buried, after the war, that under these churches were buried satanic signs of rituals. Después de la guerra también se descubrieron debajo de las iglesias que había estos rituales satánicos. Now I want to invite you to make one thought experiment. Quiero invitaros a hacer un experimento de pensamiento. Did you see this episode of Simpsons when this person comes who fights against it, wood-eating insects? ¿Has visto ese episodio de Simpsons cuando viene esa persona de empleado para luchar contra estos insectos que comen la madera? And he says, to be able to fight against these animals, I must think like being one of these animals. Dice, para poder luchar contra estos insectos, tengo que imaginar ser uno de estos insectos. Or maybe like, then when they invest one crime, they imagine to be in the shoes of the criminal, o cuando investigan un crimen se imaginan de ser en los zapatos de este criminal. By the way, you know that I have many Twitter accounts, and one of them, especially the Soul Confiscator cat, is like to imagine being working for United Nations, Mark of the Beast, 666. Ya sabéis que tengo muchos cuentas de Twitter, entre ellos el confiscador de almas, Soul Confiscator cat, gato confiscador de almas. Y ahí me imagino un poco de esta manera trabajando por Naciones Unidas, marca de la bestia 666, impuestos, tax, RFID chip, radio frequency identification, RFID. So what I wanted to say, imagine being that fallen angel, Lucifer, Satan, or the devil, how you want to call it. Así que vamos a, imagínate cómo piensa este ángel caído, Lucifer, Satan, o el diablo, como quieras llamarlo. Remember when Jesus fastened and Satan, Lucifer or devil took Jesus in the desert and showed him all the countries. Anyway, this is another example. How is it possible to show all the countries and the land if the land is round? So from one corner of the planet. And then, actually, what I want to say, then he said he used the word of God to. The word of God is the sword. Bueno, traducir. Quiero decir, en primer lugar, la palabra de Dios es la espada. Y también que cuando Lucifer o diablo, Satan, tomó, sí, Jesús estaba ayunando 40 días. 40 days, lo ha llevado al desierto y ha enseñado a Jesús todos los países. Y además, sí, ¿cómo es posible? Mira, si el mundo, la tierra es plana, así es, sí, es posible de ver todo, bueno, ver no, pero más bien probable que cuando si el mundo es redondo. What I actually want to say, the first interest of Lucifer, actually I prefer the word Lucifer because it's the big liar. It looks like light. Anyway, in the Apocalypse, okay. Keep it simple now. Quiero decir, casi prefiero el nombre de Lucifer, que parece como luz, sí, pero es todo mentira. Yeah, what I really want to say that Lucifer likes that people doubt of the word of God, the Bible. And this way, as I said before, the word of God is the sword to fight against. So if they start to doubt of this word of God, they don't have defense. Quiero decir que a Lucifer le gusta que la gente que pone en deuda lo que dice la Biblia, y la Biblia es la defensa, que se puede luchar y defenderse. Esto se puede como considerar como juicio final, es una lucha de palabras como en un juicio, la lucha espiritual. You can consider this like the last Judgment Day. It's like in court. You don't fight with guns. You fight with the words. Like in a trial, in a court, you fight with the words, and the defense is the word of God. So, what I want to say, especially, so if they doubt about this prophecy of the mark of the beast, if they doubt the Bible, so they don't pay attention to the prophecy of the mark of the beast. Cuando ponen en deuda la palabra de Dios, no ponen atención lo que dice la profecía de la marca de la bestia. So now, long time I have plans to produce some videos like pretending be the soul confiscator and accusing people of stupidity, and that's why United Nations has the right to introduce the mark of the beast. Ya hace tiempo tengo como planeado de producir vídeos como pretender ser soul confiscator, confiscador de almas, gato de cat. Así que, mira, acusando a la gente de estupidez, porque si no conocen la palabra de Dios, no prestan atención a la profecía de la marca de la bestia. Así que Naciones Unidas tiene derecho de introducir el sistema de la marca de la bestia, cobrando impuestos y confiscando almas. Confiscating souls. So I just came home now.
And caught up on just about every movie that was relevant movie that was ever made. And I realized as I was going through this that there had never been a movie made about the moon missions. And people, immediately when they hear that, they're going, "No, come on, there's been a movie made about the moon missions." I'm going, "Really? What were they? What was it?" And people, and so what I did was I listened. I go, "Yeah, there's been science fiction movies. There's been a lot of space movies. Fantasy space movies, Star Wars, Star Trek, Aliens, take your pick. Bunch of those movies. But when it comes to the realistic movies, they're very, very few and far between, to the point where you look at anything that has to deal with the actual Apollo program, even if it's fictionalized, actually dealing with it, there's only been 2 movies that are even touched it, and that the first one was in 1983. So if the moon program ended supposedly in 1972, the first moon movie that was ever done was The Right Stuff in 1983, and it was really just an astronaut training movie more than anything. It was 3 hours, and there should have been a sequel, and there never was. And then the only other movie after that even touched on it at all was Apollo 13. So you'd think, Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17, those all supposedly landed on the moon. They didn't want to touch those. But the Apollo 13, that was sneaky. It was very easy for them to do because the whole thing was supposedly in a capsule. They never landed. They had mechanical problems. They barely made it home alive. And that was it. That was 1995. And no movie, even straight-to-video movies, you'd think that you'd get at least one failure in there. And why I brought that up is it's important because it shows that was the first clue, kind of to get people in the right frame of mind. The second clue was called the bird wall, which was probably one of my favorites, which was because I kind of stumbled across what was happening there, and that was about a guy named Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the youngest admiral ever in the United States Navy, and probably our greatest explorer of all time. Maybe not the world's greatest explorer, but the greatest modern-day explorer, who flew a plane in 1926 up to the North Pole, and this is when planes were not that good. And he's mostly known for the Hollow Earth theory, and I won't really go into the Hollow Earth that much. But after 1926, you would have thought, well, he would have done more stuff up in the Arctic Circle, but no, he was ordered, or whatever you want to call it, and sent down to the South Pole from 1926 until his dying day in 1928. Until his dying day in 1957, a whole bunch of missions funded by, most of them were military backed in one way or another. The most famous, of course, being Operation High Jump in 1946, where he may or may not have engaged the Nazis because he led an entire carrier group,
right?
Full support team, the whole 9 yards. But whatever it was, people say, well, why don't you focus more on the Nazi thing in Antarctica? I go, well, because whatever it was, he seemed to take care of it. He didn't seem bothered. The big thing is this. He comes on, and we were so lucky to get this. He comes because we don't have that much 50s television footage, like this. But there was a television show called The Long Jeans. I pronounce it right this time. That the powers that be, and I call them the authority, and I really am just lumping up the government, the super rich, and the royals. They don't control just the real world. They control the fictional world as well. A lot of the television programs you watch, a lot of the movies that you watch, they go through an approval process that deals with them. And they did not want you to watch a movie that was fictionalized based on the moon, because if you knew it was Hollywood, the lines start to blur there, and you don't know exactly what you're looking at.
Yep.
And it was, again, it was an easy clue to throw out there. Not that many, some people liked it. Nobody hated it, but it was kind of put the doubt in your head to where it's like, look, there's something being hidden from you, and you don't know what it is yet. And that was the first thing I was throwing out there was this thing is, we've gone through 72 to now, is at 50 plus years, and nobody's made a realistic movie about the space program ever.
Nope.
And it's the great, and everyone knows in Hollywood, or Hollyweird or whatever you want to call it, if there's a nickel to be made, they're going to make it, and 2 sequels to go along with it.
Absolutely.
And we make horrible movies in America. I mean, there's a lot of awful movies that are made, and because again they make a nickel. And you're telling me the greatest achievement in mankind, and no one's going to touch it? No.
Oh, yeah, Mark, and there's one more thing. Neither is any other studios making any. Not just America, not Japan either.
Yeah, good point. Excellent point. So anyway, moving on, though. No, it's okay.
Get ready.
So back to what I had built actually. So I had built the flat Earth clues, and I'll rattle them off real quick. Well, not real quick, but you guys can interject with anything, and if there was any particular points you wanted to look at, or if you want to skip over anything. But I started out with the introduction, which was more or less just kind of a breaking down of what you're going to see. With, talking about the planes in the southern hemisphere and Antarctica and Admiral Byrd and NASA. Just kind of gave you a quick overview of what was going on. But what I was hinting at was like, look, it is the world that is not what you think it is. And when you break it down into easy to understand, digestible pieces, it becomes, you slowly but surely, you go from a point of scratching your head and nodding and going, I'm still not buying it, to the point where you're looking at it and going, the burden of proof shifts to the people that you put your trust in all these years, which is the government and the military. And I know there's some people out there that they literally will say to me, they'll say, the government would never lie to us in a million years. And I'm just going, yeah, well, that's not exactly what they do. And in fact, it's part of the reason I think this thing has gotten so much traction this year, not just my stuff, but other people's stuff, is because there's been so many lies told, the internet has really helped this, that people have been looking for the next big lie, especially, after 9/11 or Boston bombing or Sandy Hook, or just take your pick. People have been looking for it. And now it's like, you didn't have to look for it. You've been standing on it the entire time. Guess what?
That's what's so amazing, man. That is
here
so
it is
amazing.
For you. Do you mind if I just kind of go down through the clues?
Go right ahead. That's what I want you to do. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Just a sec before you start. I just want everyone who's downloading, the name of the YouTube video is Flat Earth Clues, 15 Parts by Mark Sargent. And I posted a link in the chat room, but for the downloaders, that's the name, Flat Earth Clues, 15 Parts by Mark Sargent on YouTube. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and those 15 parts include the intro, the 11 clues, and that's 12, and then the 3 trailers.
I can't wait till the 13th clue. You said it was going to be big, and I can't wait till you come out with that one.
Well, I'm going to hold on to. Yeah, that one's a secret right now. I'm not telling anybody.
That's what you said. That's what you said.
So So anyway, Clue one, which I called the empty theater, and that was really more of an appetizer more than anything. But I thought it was a valid point, which was most people, especially being in America, we watch a lot of media. We watch a lot of television. We watch a lot of movies. We read a lot of books. And I've watched a lot of movies over the years. I grew up. I'm old enough that that I was there when video stores were brand new.